you're obviously covering successful people, you're covering successful startups, and then some of them that you do cover kind of fall off, and you don't cover them anymore. So there's certain things that successful founders are doing. Can you sum that up at all based on your perspective?
Yeah, gosh, I mean, there's so many examples. I think back to companies that have actually moved from the startup phase to, pretty large organizations here that I've covered the entire trajectory, and I'm thinking back, like, what made them successful? So, companies like Zillow and Tableau, which I was one of the first reporters to ever cover either of those companies. I mean, I'm dating myself here that, two companies that have gone public recently are like, I was covering them when they were just little seed stage companies, which makes my job pretty interesting. But if I look back at those two as examples, and I start to think about pulling lessons out of those founders who were there, gosh, there's so many. I think hitting on what I was talking about a little bit earlier, Christian Chabot at Tableau, he was a guest of ours at one of our meetups that we had.
Interviewed him.
Back in February here of this year. And he's just such an inspiring entrepreneur, and he was also of this belief, just stick around. You gotta, I think he used the term supernova. Tableau was not a supernova like a Twitter or an Instagram. It took 10 years to build that business, and they had a vision and they stuck with it, and they kept plodding along, and they hung in there. And here they are, a $3 billion plus market value company, and so. It is one of the great things about my job is that I get to go out and interview these people or talk to them and pull lessons from these people into my own startup that I get to think about. And so I've been touched and influenced by hundreds of entrepreneurs over the years, some who've been successful, some who've not been successful. So I've got to learn from both. In the case of Zillow, I think, as you were touching on earlier, team certainly is super important. They've been able to retain a very strong management team there, and I think a strong culture that's provided them with a lot of success. And just thinking creatively about how they're monetizing their business. But even as I was describing GeekWire in terms of that whole, that editorial component that's at our core, I think of an interview that I had back with Spencer Roscoff of Zillow, the CEO, where he describes Zillow's living database of homes. They're, coming to their site and seeing every home property in the U.S. essentially. That's their core. But then they have these offshoot businesses. And so I guess in some way, I'm trying to replicate that in a very minor way of what we're doing at GeekWire. And so there are all sorts of those influences that have played a part in how we've started GeekWire that come through the transom just from our own coverage.